many years ago, I want to say maybe 10 years ago now, my husband went in for his regular checkup, and his blood work and urine analysis came back with some things flagged. And the doctor said, well, let's just repeat it. It's probably an error. We'll repeat it. They repeated it, and the same things got flagged. His potassium was elevated. Where is potassium supposed to be found? His blood plasma potassium levels were elevated. And we know that that is dangerous. It can affect excitable cells like your heart and stop your heart. A waste product of muscle metabolism, creatinine, was also elevated in him. And his unconjugated bilirubin was also elevated. So when the second time came back and they still got the same results, my honey was sent home with this big jug, about the size of those boxes in the back. And he had to collect a 24-hour urine specimen. Have you ever had to do that? It's a big jug the size of those boxes, and you catch every single drop of urine. Wherever you go, that jug goes. And you store it in the refrigerator until it's time to take it back to the doctor's office. When he did that, the same results came back. Elevated potassium, elevated creatinine, elevated unconjugated bilirubin. Now, potassium you already know about. You also know about unconjugated bilirubin. Where does bilirubin get conjugated? In the liver. Creatinine is a byproduct of muscle metabolism. It is a waste product. It should be filtered by the kidneys, and it should come out in your urine. If something is waste and it should come out in your urine, and it's not, and it's accumulating in your blood, do you agree that this is suggestive that the kidneys are not doing their job? When it comes to long-term electrolyte balance, that is also the kidney's job. If you have too much potassium in your diet, the kidneys should excrete more potassium in your urine. And my honey's potassium was elevated. That also said to the doctors, I don't think his kidneys are doing their job. The unconjugated bilirubin said to the doctor, I don't think his liver is doing his job. And whoever it was at the doctor's office called my honey and gave him the results and said, we need to schedule you to come in, and we need to do a liver and kidney biopsy because we suspect you have liver and renal failure. That is what they said over the phone. As I came downstairs, my honey met me at the bottom of the stairs and he said, I need to tell you about these results. And I was ready to hit him over the head, knock him out, grab him by his ankles, and drag him to the hospital, because if they really thought he had liver and renal failure, he should go to the hospital now. So I said, I need to see the latest test results. So he went and got his papers, and I see what's flagged, the creatinine, the unconjugated bilirubin, and the potassium, and I'm crying all the way to Saddleback. It was a Wednesday evening, and I remember because I had physiology lab with one class on Wednesdays. And as I came to the door and I was unlocking it, and this is at the old building, and I'm crying, this class was filled predominantly with ex-military individuals. Most of them men. I don't know how it worked out that way, but it did. And they weren't doing well. And one of them, Kevin McCarthy, walks up to me and he's like, they're there. It's okay. He just did not know what to do. And I said, asses in seats, we have got to figure this out. And this was almost towards the end of the semester, so they already had this lecture I'm going to give you. And I said, we have got a problem. So I put up Honey's lab results. I said, this has been shown time and time again. They think he has renal and liver failure. And some of them were ex-military medics, so they had some knowledge. And they sat there and they said, Kara, you of all people know that this is suggestive of liver and renal failure, of these organs not doing their job. And I said, you're right, it is suggestive, but there are two sides to every coin. Two sides to every coin. These three things, two of the three are considered waste and should be eliminated. And one is elevated and is clearly not being regulated. I get that. But they had to come from somewhere. It's not just about getting rid of them. Where are they coming from? Because if they come from somewhere and they're being overproduced, maybe the liver and kidneys just can't keep up with the workload. It's not necessarily that they're failing, it's just that these things are being overproduced. That could be the issue, not necessarily failure. And so the whole class went, okay, we'll play. Let's do this. They said, first, let's start with the creatinine. I said, you know where that comes from? They said, yes, byproduct of muscle metabolism. I said, well, let me tell you about this ritual that my batshit crazy husband will do before he goes to the doctor. Before he goes to the doctor, he will work out excessively, as if his excessive workouts will reverse in time any bad behavior he might have had on his body. Sort of like going to McDonald's and ordering a Big Mac, large fry, and because you're on a Diet Coke. It doesn't balance out. So I said, he does these extreme workouts. There's your creatinine. It's possible. It's possible. And they said, okay, we'll give you that one. They said, well, what about the potassium? I said, where is potassium most abundantly found? Inside the cells. I said, where, what tissue is very large, very abundant, and if you work out excessively, will leak potassium? Muscle. That's where most of your potassium is found. I said, there you go. Same thing. Stress to the muscles, they tear. Here comes the potassium. Cells can even lyse. That's called rhabdomyolysis. That's not a new term. I've taught you all this. They said, Kara, you're really searching. I said, this is all I got. He's the epitome of health. He can't have renal and liver failure all in 1 year. It doesn't make sense. They said, okay. What about the unconjugated bilirubin? I said, He plays on a soccer team. They go crazy. It's like war. There are no rules. If you asked him to drop his pants beyond his shins, you would see down by his ankle, he has a large hematoma. Lots of bruising, lots of swelling, lots of bruising. And what are the wonderful colors of a bruise from? Why does it start to turn yellow? It's unconjugated bilirubin. So again, my position was, maybe it's not a problem with getting rid of because those organs are failing. Maybe he's got too much of it and the organs can't keep up. And the student said, okay, we'll buy it for $1. Now what do you want us to do? I said, you're writing a letter. I want those 3 things justified. Think of this as a big, badass relationship problem. I want the letter written. I'm going to go get letterhead to write it on. Went and got an envelope. We wrote this letter. We said to the doctor, look at his hematoma, because how many doctors do you go to where they go, Elizabeth, do you have a large hematoma that you'd like to show me? No, you're okay? Okay. Elizabeth, would you like to tell me your workout schedule? How many doctors have ever asked you that? They don't, right? So those are not normal questions. So we wrote up this letter, and I brought it home, and I said, honey, when you go for this biopsy, if you don't want it done, this might be your Hail Mary pass. This is the last game. This is the last play of the game. Give this to your doctor. And honey, for once, listened to me, gave it to his doctor, and the doctor said, show me this hematoma that you have. First of all, honey didn't know what that was. So the doctor had to say, do you have an owie on your body? Because like, yes, I do. Tell me about your workout routine. So the doctor said, I think your wife and her class might have something here. I want you not to work out for 2 weeks. Don't do any soccer for 2 weeks. You got to let that hematoma heal. Don't do anything extreme. Come back in 2 weeks. We're going to repeat your blood and urine analysis. Normal. Normal. And it was part of our justification was we actually calculated his renal function and said, if you think he's got renal failure, then why, when we calculate his GFR, are we getting relatively normal values? Why would you think that? Did you even look at that? So I want you to think about this when I abuse you with the math. It's something like 7 equations. It's not calculus. It's not calculus. It's multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. That's it. That's all. I'm going to go through all of these terms, and there are numbers associated with them. You must know normal values. You have to, because in your lab manual and on your lab exam, I'm going to ask you, once you calculate your patient's values, I'm going to say to you or ask you, are they higher or lower than normal? What do you think this means? If you are over age 30 for every decade after 30, you have a 10% decline in renal function. And I joked with you, if nothing else kills you, renal failure will. And I hope that's what gets you, because that means you should be able to live pretty long and relatively healthy, because renal failure can take a while. But there are different kinds of renal failure. There's pre-renal, there's intrarenal, and there's post-renal. And depending on where the failure is, pre, intra, or post, that dictates how we help the person. I'm going to teach you how to evaluate that. If it's pre-renal failure, that means you do not have adequate blood pressure to get the blood and plasma to and through the kidneys for them to filter. Okay, well then maybe it's a heart issue. Maybe there's an obstruction in the renal artery obscuring the blood flow. If it's intra-renal failure, then that means we have something going awry with the filtration membrane, the nephron itself. Well, there's not a lot we can do with that. We can do dialysis, and we can do a kidney transplant. There's not much more beyond that. If it's post-renal failure, that was the example in my lecture with the person with the prostate cancer. Something obstructing the flow of urine out of the body. Then the fluid would dam up. We would get an increase in the Starling force in the glomerular capsule, which would oppose filtration. Now, all the waste products that you should filter are not being filtered. As I go through this lecture, there are some solutes I expect you to follow and know their fate. By fate, I mean once they get into the glomerulus, if they do at all, into the glomerular capsule, Bowman's capsule. What happens to them as they go through the nephron? It's a short list. 1, glucose. I want to know the fate of glucose. Glucose is freely filtered, but should glucose come out in your urine? So you already know it shouldn't be in your urine, but are there individuals where it does?
Yes.
Okay, we got to figure out why. Next solute. Electrolytes, like sodium and potassium. They are also freely filtered. Do they come out in your urine? Yes. How much? Well, it depends. It depends on your diet. If you are on a high sodium diet, you're probably going to pee out a lot more sodium because you don't need all that in your body. If you're on a high potassium diet, you're probably going to pee out more potassium because you don't need all that in your body. So it's variable. Depends. So we got glucose, we got electrolytes. I just want you to know the two. Albumin. Albumin is a plasma protein. It's the most abundant plasma protein. Should that be filtered? It should not. It should not get into the nephron. So it should not even enter Bowman's capsule. That is assuming a healthy filtration membrane. By the way, why doesn't albumin get filtered? Is it size exclusion? No. Charge. Did you know that? Did you know that from anatomy? Did your professor tell you it was size? Oh.
You know that?
No. So we got glucose, electrolytes, albumin. Then there's one called inulin. And with it, this substance called creatinine. So inulin and creatinine are not the same, but we use them for similar things. I'll explain that. And the last one that I want you to know is PAH. PAH. And that stands for para-aminohippuric acid. Don't worry, it's spelled out on a slide for you. I will get there and I will explain what we use it for. So how many of you have ever had blood and urine analysis done? Almost all of you. And again, if you go look up all of your past blood and urine work, you should have something called eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate, where your doctor assessed your renal function and how well they're doing their job. Tonight, I'm going to teach you how to assess renal function. I admit, you will never be asked to do this as a nurse in a hospital. You will never, ever be asked. But knowing how they assess it means you can explain it better to a patient or the patient's family. And if you can explain it better, then you are probably going to be perceived by that patient and their family as the nurse that has a brain. And I think you all want to be regarded as having a brain, right? Nobody wants the dumb nurse. Who does? No one does. So it's not hard math. The trick, what makes it hard, is visualizing these volumes. And as we keep practicing them, I will get out my beakers and I will fill up these beakers so you can get a visual on these volumes. I just didn't have time to do that today. I had people in office hours. And the other part that makes it difficult is that when you use one equation, first you got to figure out which equation you start with. That's a hard start. Which one should I use? Then when you get the answer to whatever equation you use, then you have to take the answer and plug it into another equation. And then you get the answer, and you have to plug it into another equation. It's sort of like a scavenger hunt of equations. Turn it into a game. If attitude is everything in life, you always pick a good one, right? It's a game. It's fun with math. Up on the screen, you're seeing 4 different substances with different fates. We're going to talk about them. First, I'm going to go through all those terms, define what they are, and tell you their volumes, which you do need to know. For tonight, I want you to pretend that you have one kidney. You have one nephron being fed by one glomerulus. Just one. Leading to one bladder, one urethra. So all things in the plasma are coming to this glomerulus, and those solutes that I asked you to know, you need to know their fate. Can they be filtered in the first place? What was the one that doesn't get filtered in your list? Albumin. Then after that, is it reabsorbed? Reabsorbed means it goes back into the blood. The nephron cells reach into the filtrate, they grab a solute, and they go, you cannot go to the toilet. Now, which solute out of the 5 is the best example where the cells might go, you should not be in the toilet? And it goes back in the blood. That's reabsorption. Secretion means something in the blood didn't get filtered. It's going out through the efferent arteriole, and those solutes, if they could talk, might go, you didn't get us, neener, neener, neener. And then the nephron cells go, and you're going to the toilet. So they reach into the plasma, and they put those solutes and say, you thought you were getting away, didn't you? That's called secretion. Solutes move from the blood into the lumen of the nephron when they weren't filtered in the first place. They were trying to get away. So what determines if something gets filtered and reabsorbed or secreted? Well, filtered, yes, size is part of it, but it's also charge that you learned during that video. When we're talking about reabsorption or secretion, we got to talk about permeability and membrane transport. It's unit 2 all over again. Facilitated diffusion, primary active transport, secondary active transport, simple diffusion. It's unit 2, it's old stuff. And then also we need to worry about surface area. In the video, when you just had a quiz on, surface area refers to the number of healthy glomeruli that you have. KF. If those glomeruli die, which they do over your lifetime, KF goes down. And I said that's the number 1 change in our kidneys in that filtration equation across our lifespan. But it is not a moment-to-moment change, is it? All right. So here's your heart, and your heart is pumping out 5 liters of blood per minute. 5 liters of blood are going to, through, and out of the heart, and through the parts of your body per minute. That's cardiac output. That's not new. That's not new. When the heart ejects all this blood, some blood goes to your brain, some blood goes to your lungs, some blood goes to your kidneys. Roughly 1/4 of cardiac output goes to your kidneys per minute. It's closer to 1,200 milliliters per minute. That will be our normal value. That is the amount of blood going to, through, and out of the kidneys per minute. This is renal blood flow. Its name tells you what it is. It's the amount of blood flowing to, through your kidneys. To, through, and out.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
1,200 milliliters. If you took a quarter of 5 liters for cardiac output, you would get 1,250. But the number for renal blood flow is closer to 1,200 milliliters per minute, and that will be the number we use. Because at any given moment, there is some vasoconstriction of your blood vessels. Okay? Now, of whole blood, what is the part that can be filtered? Plasma. So, plasma is roughly 55% of whole blood. But is it? Is it exactly? That assumes that you all have a hematocrit of 45%. Do you? Maybe you have 40% hematocrit, 38. Could I figure out exactly what your hematocrit is? Yes, you did that lab. It's not hard. I draw blood, I put it in a capillary, a little glass capillary, and I spin it in a centrifuge. And I measure the whole column height and divide that into the column of the red blood cell height. So once I know your hematocrit, can I then subtract that from 1 and know what percentage of plasma you have? Yeah, it's not hard. So I'm going to assume 55% plasma using our normal value of 45% for hematocrit. And if I multiply 0.55 times 1,200 milliliters, 55% of 1,200 milliliters, I get 660 milliliters. And that's the amount of plasma going to, through, and out of the kidneys. That is called your renal plasma flow. Oh, are we still mad over that one? Some people behind you all are going, ooh, the drama. But what part of that plasma will actually be filtered? You see, blood is going to, through, and out of the kidneys, not just for the sake of filtering plasma. We also need to deliver blood to the cells of the kidney to deliver nutrition, deliver oxygen, and pick up waste products. So let's just address the amount of plasma that will be filtered. It's approximately 20% of your renal plasma flow, approximately. And this is called GFR, glomerular filtration rate. It is 125 milliliters per minute. But is it? Is your patient filtering 125 milliliters per minute? That's this beaker completely filled. 125 milliliters per minute. And of that 125 milliliters per minute, as it's going through the nephron, 123 milliliters gets put back into your blood, which means you are dripping, drip, 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 out of your ureter into your bladder, 2 milliliters of urine a minute.
So is the 123 milliliters per minute going to be 60%?
That's what we reabsorb, yes. So let's do it again, but we're going to add a few more values. Renal blood flow, the amount of whole blood going to, through, and out of the kidneys. It is approximately a quarter of cardiac output, but is it? Because I'm going to teach you how you can calculate your patient's renal blood flow. It is not very invasive. You do not need to insert a catheter up into their renal artery to measure how much blood is going by. All we have to do is draw blood, collect urine, send it to the lab. Poof! We get all this information back. And I'm going to show you the simple equation we use to calculate renal blood flow. It's not hard. It's really not. So our class value will be 1,200 milliliters per minute for renal blood flow. Now, you heard me say not all blood is going through and out of the kidneys for the sake of being processed, filtered. Some blood is going to deliver nutrients, oxygen. But when we're assessing renal function, we are only worried about the amount of blood going to the kidneys for the sake of being filtered, processed. We only want to know how much blood is effectively going to the kidney to be filtered. This is called effective renal blood flow. Effective renal blood flow is 90% of renal blood flow. I am the math and science person in my family. The boys had personal tutors for math and science all through elementary school, middle school, and high school. Honey is all things about government, English, writing. Heck, he works for the Orange County Department of Education and flies to the chancellor's office. Chances are my husband wrote your high school English writing curriculum. Personal tutors. Can you imagine? But they didn't like studying with us because we could get pretty nasty. McLean! What does the word is mean in math? ERBF is 90% of RBF. What does the word is mean in math? Didn't you like your word problems? Is means equals. ERBF is. ERBF equals 90% of. McLean, what does the word of mean in math? Multiply. ERBF is 90% of RBF. ERBF, effective renal blood flow, equals 0.9 times 1,200 milliliters. And when I do that, I get 1,080 milliliters per minute. That is your ERBF. That is the amount of whole blood going to the kidneys for the sake of being processed. But we've already addressed that it's not whole blood that gets filtered, it's just the plasma part. So renal plasma flow, if we assume a normal hematocrit, renal plasma flow is 55% of renal blood flow. If I multiply 0.55 times 1,200 milliliters, I get 660 milliliters per minute. But not all of that plasma is going to the kidneys for the sake of being filtered, and we are only interested in the amount of plasma going to the kidneys for the sake of being filtered. So ERPF, effective renal plasma flow, is equals 90% of times RPF. 660 times 0.9 gives me 594 milliliters per minute. That is ERPF. You already had a quiz on this. You know about your Starling forces and how strong they are approximately, and that there are only 3 that you need to worry about, not 4. And overall, with those Starling forces, we get about 20% filtered rate. And that glomerular filtration rate is 125 milliliters per minute. And that means you filter your plasma about 60 times a day. 180 liters worth of plasma circulates through your kidneys. If plasma is about 3 liters of your whole blood, that means you are filtering your plasma about 60 times a day. Your kidneys, matched by gram, are one of the most hardest working organs, and they consume the most ATP matched by gram. Yeah.
What is the CA? Period?
Calculated average. So that's your filtration fraction. It's about 20%. Okay, now we need to talk about filtered load. Now remember in the beginning of this semester when you learned about body fluid compartments? And I made a margarita with someone. Who was that person? And are they still here? Oh yeah, so it was Lauren. And I forget, Lauren, what did you like in your margarita? And did you have one on Monday?
I did have one.
Okay, good. So let's make another batch of margaritas. Tequila.
Lime. Oh, that's good.
Okay. Lime?
Sure.
Okay.
A little more. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Anything else? Ice.
Yeah, well,
Okay. Clink, 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 clink. I know it is. Clink, 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 clink.
Close test, close test.
And I am going to serve you. You ready?
Yeah.
Here you go. Okay. Cheers. Yeah. So, Lauren drinks her glass of margarita. I drink the remaining pitcher. Which one of us is most at risk of getting a DUI and why?
Well, her, because you'll probably beat it.
Okay, play nicely, assuming I live. Me, right? Why? You had one. Officer, I only had one. I only had one. The size of my head. But it was one. Clearly, I consumed more tequila in that one drink than Lauren did. Agreed? So there were other things in this mixture besides tequila. There was lime, and it watered it down a little bit. But we can think of the amount I poured Lauren as her GFR. Here's 125 milliliters of margarita for you. I will have the rest. 594 minus 125 gives me 469. Am I doing my math right? So you got 125, I got 469. How much alcohol is in her 125 sample? Wouldn't you need to know the proportion of tequila to the lime juice? Are you following? If the tequila was 4/5 of the total volume, could we calculate how many milliliters of tequila Lauren got? If you know she got 125 milliliters, and 4/5 of that was tequila, couldn't you do simple math and find out how many milliliters of tequila she actually consumed? Then you can look at the bottle and actually calculate how much alcohol she consumed. We could then take her weight and figure out how many hours she should wait before driving, couldn't we? Now that's a lot of math you probably will get wrong if you're drinking trying to figure that out. Best to do that before the drinking. It's a great drinking game. Could you calculate how much I would have consumed? 469 times 4 divided by 5, right? So, how much I poured Lauren, that's her GFR. This is how much filtrate entered Bowman's cup. Oh, Bowman's capsule, it's the cup. Bowman's cup. Okay? Filtered load refers to what solute came with that volume. How much tequila came with that volume? It wasn't pure tequila, was it? So, how did we calculate how much tequila was in Lauren's cup? What did you have to know? The concentration, the ratio. Okay, well, how do we do that in a patient's body? we draw blood. We send it to the lab. And then they report plasma concentration of whatever solute we're interested in. Glucose, sodium, albumin. We get all that back. We know the concentration. And what is the concentration usually given to us as? Grams percent. Do we remember that? That was week 1 of phys. Week 1. Did you purge? My brain's a computer, Kara. I've got to delete to make more memory space. No, well then you've got to delete your children's names, your family members' names, birth dates. That's all not necessary. Got to make more room for phys. It works. And that's how it is in my house. Just, hey, you, whatever, you, oldest, I think, come here. Purge, 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 not necessary information. Girlfriend's birthday. Yeah. Filtered load. Filtered load is calculated by multiplying 2 things. GFR, how much I poured, times concentration, 4/5 tequila. Concentration, the lab tells us. We draw blood, we send it to the lab, they tell us the concentration. All we have to do is multiply it. How much tequila got in Lauren's cup? 125 times 4/5. That's it, that's all we do. Once we calculate filtered load, the amount of solute entering Bowman's capsule, Bowman's cup, per minute, the units are milligrams per minute. Then we have to address the fate. What happens to that solute? What next? Well, substance A is filtered and nothing else happens to it. It's on its way to the toilet. Do you agree? Whatever I pour into Bowman's cup will end up, this is me catching urine, will end up in the urine. Agreed? What goes in comes out. Send that to the lab. They'll tell us. Same, matchy, same. What about substance B? It's filtered, but some is reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. So compared to how much I filtered, how much will I get in the urine? Equal? More? Less? Less. Good. This is why knowing the fates of those solutes that I gave you is so important. What about substance C? Filtered, 100% reabsorbed. Should I get any of it in the urine?
No.
What solute that I give you follows that? Good, glucose. Then we have substance D. It's filtered, but it's also secreted. So when I capture the urine and send it to the lab, will I get equal to what I filtered? Less or more? More. Absolutely. And the substance that I gave you that follows that in your list is called PAH. It's coming. I'm going to explain it. Just give me a moment. PAH. So again, substance A, whatever you filter will come out in the P. Now this reminds me, I should put on the board an equation. E equals F plus S minus R. That is your master equation. E stands for excretion. That means what comes out in the urine. F means what you filtered. S stands for secretion. And R stands for reabsorption. If solute A is filtered and nothing else happens to it, watch the math. S and R do not apply. Do you agree? Whatever I filter will come out in the urine, matched. E equals F. When you do your math tonight, you want to make the math easier for you. If something doesn't apply in that equation to whatever solute you're playing with, then delete it. In this example, substance A, it's filtered only. It's not secreted. It's not reabsorbed. Then I get those out of my equation. Whatever I filter will come out in the P. It's matched. Substance B, partially reabsorbed, not secreted, so S would go away. I would have a little bit less in the urine than what I filtered because I reabsorbed some. Substance C, I completely reabsorb. So F plus R, F minus R would equal E. S is canceled out, is what I meant to say. And then substance D is a substance that is filtered and secreted. R goes away in that case. And I would get more of substance D in the urine than what I filtered. So that's your master equation. E equals F plus S minus R. F of S stands for filtered load. Filtered load of a substance. How much tequila did I get into Lauren's cup? How do I calculate that? I need to know how much I poured Lauren. I need to know my proportion of tequila. I need to know my patient's plasma concentration. Can I get that done? Yes, draw blood, send it to the lab. What piece of equipment do they probably use to measure these things in someone's blood and urine? That was also the first 2 weeks of lab. Spectrophotometers. Remember red dye number 40? Remember that? Absorbance, Lambert-Beer law. Those were good times. Remember, it was so simple back then. This is your master equation. If you need to solve for an unknown, can you rearrange it to solve for your unknown? Like I did here for secretion. Can you do that? You're going to be asked to do that tonight. Another way to calculate E, excretion, is simply collect the urine from your patient, send it to the lab, and they will report how much urine you collected in an hour. It's not hard to do. Insert a catheter. Or this time of year, if you pay attention out in the hallways, if you're here during the day, you might see the bio majors walking around with the big, huge glass beakers. For 3 hours during their lab, they have to capture every single drop of urine, so they're walking around with their urine in the halls. It's awesome. And then they're measuring what comes out in their urine. Oh, you're going to be doing that too. Oh yeah, give me a week. You're just not going to have a big beaker. You're going to have these cute little urine cups, and you're going to go to the bathroom, and you're going to come back with them. Can I give you a little word of warning? When you come back with your urine cup, make sure the lid is on tight. And if I were you, I'd make sure, before everyone comes back with their urine, to make sure all the trip hazards on the floor are picked up. And if you have anything precious on your table, you might want to put it safe in a cabinet. Because one semester, a sweet young student, he came back from the bathroom, did not have the urine cup lid on very tightly, and he was talking and walking and tripped over someone's book bag, and it was like a slow motion scene in a movie. And you saw this perfect arc of urine come just kaploosh all over the table, all over lab manuals for all of his lab table mates. Oh, it was awesome! So deliciously awkward. Urine's sterile. 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 Other word.
You just dropped the plastic.
No, he didn't. But part of the problem also was that he was stoned every time he came to class. So that might have something to do with the Can't get the lid on right. Anyway. No shock there. He got kicked out of nursing school. Can't go through nursing school stoned. Little warning. So urine flow rate, we capture the urine. It's not hard. We either have them pee every 20 minutes. We know how many minutes we collected their urine from, or we can insert a catheter, then it just drips right in the bag. Anyone with me want to go into a business deal with me? I want to open my own movie theater, like high-end concierge kind of style movie theater. I mean, it's so... They've got movie theaters where you can order dinner and they bring you your dinner. And you can order cocktails and they bring you your cocktails. I'm going to one-up it, and I need nurses. I'm just saying, little catheter. And you never have to get up to go to the bathroom during the whole movie. Why? It's so easy going in. It's coming out. That's the part that's a little tricky. Point your toes. They distract you. They're like, can you point your toes as hard as you can? You're like, I can't. Whoa! Yank. So now you've been warned. Catheter going in. Not difficult. And by the way, when you practice, guys, the first time putting in a catheter into a female, please, anatomy was a prereq. Please review that women have more than one hole. Make sure you get the right hole. Or you might go home with a friend for life. I'm not getting any urine. Yeah, but I'm happy. It's gonna happen. So much easier on a man. Harder on a woman. Okay, so E equals V, that's a flow rate, should have a dot over it, times the urine concentration of a substance. That's another way of calculating excretion of a substance in urine. Now, renal clearance values. This is a very challenging concept. And I'm going to tell you a story, a true story, to help you through this concept. Pay attention, there will be a quiz about this story. Okay, you ready? It doesn't, look at Tyler, it's like, he got a whole sheet of paper. It's not worth any points. Just listen, okay? Just listen. My little Hermione. You met Mac, troublemaker. You haven't met Hayden. Now, Hayden and Mac are about 4.5 years age difference from each other. And although both of them were very athletic, because of this age difference, they didn't really play together too much when they were little. Too much of a gap. But every once in a while, there would be what we would call a good brother day, where they actually played with each other, got along. Hayden was tolerant of Mac. And one day, in particular, I remember, they were shooting basketball. They were playing horse. And they decided to come in, and they were going to go up to Hayden's room and play video games. So Hayden's leading the way, and Mac is behind him, and Mac reaches up as they're climbing up the stairs, puts his hand on Hayden's shoulder, and says, H, I'm starting to hate you less. And I was like, I'm going to take that. I'll take it. It's a win. Sometimes these brother days, these good brother days, would fall on a Friday. Fridays, of course, are good days. If you think back when you've been in school, Friday's like, oh, the weekend. I have homework, but I don't have to get it done. I can sleep in tomorrow. Remember Fridays? How good it felt. And on Fridays, when the boys were younger, I would go to the grocery store and I would get food. And I have a kitchen that's a galley kitchen, which means I have just a really long counter. None of this island bullshit, open concept. I like my galley kitchen. And I would, by the time the boys would come home, I would have Subway sandwiches, pizzas, gummy bears, Gardettos, sodas, bubble water, potato chips, freshly cut fruit, freshly cut veggies and dip, whole spread. And it didn't take long for all of their friends to figure this out, and I would have an army of children descend into the house, engorge in all this food, go out and play in the park or go out in the pool. It was just all these friends. And it was super fun. I enjoyed that. It made me happy. Every once in a while, it would be another Good Brother Day, even with all these friends. And the big guys would actually want to play with the little guys. And every once in a while, they would decide they were going to have a Nerf gun war. And they would split up into two teams. And it wasn't just big guys against little guys. They'd actually mix and make fair teams. Now, my boys during this time had every Nerf gun imaginable, with every bullet type imaginable. We had the foam, the orange foam with the orange plastic tip. We had the green foam with the green plastic tip that glows in the dark. We had the Nerf guns that shoot the discs, orange discs, green discs that glow in the dark. We had the bullets, foam bullet with plastic tip with Velcro. So if you shot it, it would stick to the person. So there was none of this, you didn't get me, yes I did. It was like, it stuck to you. Clearly he got you. So every once in a while, they would decide they would have this big Nerf gun war. And every child, because this is how many Nerf guns we had, every child got to pick 3 Nerf guns. Every kid got a Nerf gun where you had to manually load the bullet, cock the gun, it would shoot one at a time. Every kid got a hand Nerf gun that had a clip that would shoot the bullets, but not semi-automatic style. You had to cock the gun and shoot it, but it came loaded with a clip of bullets. Every child got a Nerf gun that was battery operated with a clip of bullets that would rapid fire. Then every child picked a lightsaber. Why? Because last man stand, if you ran out of bullets, you could deflect. So they'd all suit up, and we had holsters. No, we did. That's what we did. And they'd go up to Mac's room and they'd get all of this ready. It'd take like 20 minutes because they're bargaining for which gun and which team, and the dog is just like, she's a border collie. So what do border collies like to do? Chase, herd. And she knew shit was about to go down in this house. So she'd be like, singing. They'd have to shut the door and she'd be like, scrap. And then my job, while they were getting ready, my job was to open every single door in the house. The front door, the back door, the guest back door, the garage side door. Oh, then go upstairs, open all windows, take off screens, insert fire ladder, because I was about to have a whole house full of boys running to, through, and out all the levels of the house, and even jumping out of my bedroom window into the pool for a quick escape. No one ever wanted the dog on their team because if you were trying to hide, she'd be like, and boom, you're eliminated. So the dog was like her own special team. And whenever they'd cock the gun, she's like, like she was like, just going nuts. So it's just kids and dog and fur and just upstairs, out windows. And then they might run through the kitchen like, and keep running. And there was, at that point, there was only one thing for me to do. Glass of wine the size of my head and sit on the couch and watch it all go down. What else was there to do? At the end of all this, the boys were quite good about collecting all the bullets. They put all the bullets on McLean's floor in one pile. They put all the lightsabers in a pile somewhere else. All the guns in another pile. And I would say to them, just put them in the piles. I will put them away because I'm not stupid. I would actually organize them, reload all the clips, have everything ready, because if there's another Good Brother Day, you don't want to waste time, because if it's not ready, then they start fighting. So I'm not stupid. When they're done swimming, playing the park, whatever, I would be upstairs starting to pick up. Now let's say Matt comes up to help me. Okay, this is the quiz part. Paying attention? I'm going to pick up the bullets and organize them. Matt is going to pick up the lightsabers. Matt and I are going to lean over and pick up one item at a time. One item at a time. Eventually, we will clear the carpet of these toys, won't we? Okay? Who will clear their section of carpet first, me or Mac? How did you know? Were you paying attention to the story? How do you know Mac would clear his section first? More rounds of bullets, because you all heard me say each kid got 3 guns and some of them had clips, right? How many lightsabers did each kid get? 1. Okay, good. Good. Now, let's up the ante a little bit. Hayden and his friends come in. They're going to help me. Hayden and his friends are helping me. We're picking up bullets. Mac is picking up lightsabers. Okay, we're starting over now. All of us bend over and pick up one item at the same rate. Now who will clear their section of carpet faster? Still Mac? It's harder to answer, isn't it? So what was your question?
How many of his friends help you?
How many are helping me? Okay, 10.
How many people did you start with?
How many people did we start with if each one gets 3 guns? How big are these clips? How many bullets can they store? You needed to know more information. You needed to know what we started with. Didn't you? What we started with. Now, instead of clearing carpet, we're clearing plasma. We're picking up solutes out of the plasma and we want to put them in the toilet. We're cleansing out our blood. Can you figure that out? Can you process that? Okay? Renal clearance means a volume of plasma cleared of a substance per minute. Per minute. A volume of plasma cleansed of a substance per minute. Just like an area of carpet cleared of lightsabers per minute. Can you visualize that? Okay. When we calculate renal clearance values, RCVs, we need to know a starting point. We need to know how much was in the blood in the first darn place. Don't we? That's where we draw blood. We send it to the lab and we say, could you please tell us what we're starting with? Does that make sense? Then, if we're clearing something from the blood, where should it go? To your urine. So we need to collect the urine. We need to know how much we collected in an hour. It's a flow in time. And we need to send it to the lab saying, tell us how much of this waste actually showed up in this person's urine. Does that make sense? So renal clearance equation It's real easy. Renal clearance, the equation. Urine flow times the concentration of that solute in the urine. What comes out? Divided by what you started with. Stop and think. Stop and think. If you start with more, do you think it's going to take longer to clear your plasma of it? That's the bullets, right? So if the denominator is bigger, what's going to happen to your renal clearance? The amount of plasma you clear per minute. It's going to be lower. Of course it's going to take me longer to clear max floor of the bullets than the lightsabers. Does that make sense? Not that hard, right? Not really. The story kind of helps. And then people are like, did you really do? Yes, I really did that. And it was such a sad day about it. I think it was last summer. Matt got rid of all of his Nerf guns. Now, the little boy across the street was very happy with that. But it was sad for me. No. Well, we already had those too. Now we've upped our game to 22s and pellet guns. And well, now they don't shoot each other clearly with a pellet gun. There's a $20 bounty for every squirrel they kill in my garden. Boom. Mom, I got one. Well, here's $20. Thank you. People are concerned when they go by the back door and there's this big rifle pellet gun. They're like, what are you doing with this? And then the boys say, my mom pays us for every squirrel we shoot.
How many have they gotten?
Mac has gotten 2, I think. Hayden has gotten 1. That was last year. The squirrels learn. They start talking with each other. They really do. We'll see. The season starts now. Once the garden goes in, they start coming by. So you have renal clearance values. What comes out divided by what you start with? What comes out divided by what you started with? All right, Kara. Renal clearance sounds good. Interesting story. What does this have to do with the price of potatoes? You started out this lecture telling us about your husband having possible renal and liver failure. You started out saying that you're going to teach us how to calculate renal function. Where are we? Okay. In order for me to teach you how to calculate renal function, the first equation was to show you this renal clearance value. If the kidneys are not doing their job of cleansing your blood, clearing your blood, then your renal clearance values are not going to be in normal range. Understood? Okay. So I started out saying, could you please think of one kidney in your body, one glomerulus, one nephron? Here it is. In yellow, one nephron. Here's your glomerulus. Here is the peritubular capillary bed. Okay, I am about to show you some math proofs. Didn't you love math proofs? Did you like those? I did too. Geometry. Love the proofs in geometry. Speaking my language. Did you all like the proofs in geometry? I didn't think so. So guess what? The proof I am about to show you is my job. I am going to prove to you the math. I'm going to use substitution. Do you remember substitution in your math proofs? If something equals something else, you could just swap it out, right? I am going to show you the proof. You will never have to show the proof back to me. This part that I'm about to show you is it's all about certain substances we use in a clinical setting to help us evaluate our patient's renal function. And it's my job to prove to you why a particular substance we use, something we inject, is okay. That's my job to prove to you. You could either pay attention to the proof, or you can go, no, Kara, I'll just believe you. Whatever you want to do. But I like to show proof to my students. Here's evidence why this works the way I say it will. Okay? So, first thing, what substance are we playing with? Because I said substances have different fates. Do you remember? Okay, let's play with a substance that is filtered only. Filtered only. What crosses out of my mastery equation? S and R. So whatever I filter is on its way to the toilet. Matchy-matchy, equal. Agreed? Okay, remember that. That's the substance we're playing with right now. Something that's filtered only. So here we come. Here's our plasma, our ERPF. Here's our 125. See all the little dots in there? That's the tequila that got poured into Bowman's cup. And here's the tequila on its way to the toilet. 594 milliliters show up. I filter 125. 469 milliliters escaped with some of the solute. Ha ha, you didn't filter a neener. And if that's something I want to clear from my body, do you agree that that plasma will have to go back out of the kidney to the heart, to the pulmonary circuit, back out to the systemic circuit, back to the... It will have to take several times through the kidneys before we 100% clear it. It's going to take a while, isn't it? Because it's just filtered. It's just me picking up the bullets. No one's helping me. So if all I have to clear this from the plasma is just filtration, that blood is going to have to circulate many times through, many minutes before it's cleared. And it might be really long depending on how much we started with. How many bullets? Tyler said, how many kids were over that day? Was it 30 kids or 15? What are we talking about here, Kara? So the substance that I am playing with is filtered only. Everything else in the equation falls away. Those are not its fate. Whatever I filter will come out in the urine. Agreed? You all agree. That's my first math proof. You agree. And why does that math proof work? Because I said we were playing with a substance that is filtered only. Right? So because it's filtered only, I don't have to worry about this math. And we're good. I know you're getting tired and you need a break, but I'm almost done. And then you can have your break and walk around and you'll look at your exam. But I'm going for the kill, so pay attention. What is this substance? Inulin. Inulin was one of those substances that I asked you to know. Inulin is a carbohydrate. It comes from plants like garlic, things with bulbs. Garlic, onion, that type of thing. Shallots. It's a carbohydrate. You don't make it, and I inject it. I inject it into your blood. You cannot digest it. I inject it. The only thing you can do with it is filter it. That's it. It is only filtered, and whatever your kidneys filtered, it's coming out in the urine. Give it enough time, your plasma will be cleared of it. Well, how long will it take, Kara? What is that dependent on? How much? And your renal function, isn't it? Okay. Well, if I know how much I inject and how long that should take, If your kidneys are failing, it might take you longer than normal compared to other people. And this now tells me something about your kidney function, doesn't it? So, how do we do this? We're using inulin. It's filtered only, Kara. E equals F. Got it. Not a problem. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to inject inulin into Juliana. I'm going to ask her to stand up and do some somersaults to mix it in her blood. We don't really do that, but I like to say that just to see who's paying attention. Make your patient stand up and jump. Get good mixture. If I inject the same amount into Juliana, and the same amount into Lauren, and the same amount into Elizabeth, if I inject the same amount into all of you, does that mean you all will have the same concentration of it in your blood? No. Why? You all have different volumes of blood, don't you? Don't you? You are all hydrated differently right now. So what will I have to do, even though I inject the same amount, the same quantity, I'm going to have to draw your blood, aren't I, to know my starting concentration. Because for all of you, it will be different. And I got to know my starting amount. Tyler said, how many kids were we talking about, Kara? How many bullets per clip were we talking about? I got to know my starting amount. Okay, so I get a blood sample, send it off to the lab, and after an hour, let's say, I've been collecting your urine for an hour through a catheter. I could pour that into a beaker. I know how much urine I collected in that hour. That's a flow. That's your V. V in the equation. I can send the urine off to the lab, and they can tell me how much inulin came out in your blood in that hour. Out in your urine in that hour. Right? I know how much I started with. I know how much urine I collected. I know how much inulin is in the urine that I collected. I know all that. Okay. Excretion equals flow times the inulin concentration in the urine. That was one way to solve for E. If you go back a few slides, this was one way to solve for E. Agreed? Urine flow rate times the urine concentration of inulin. We all said that inulin is filtered only. Nothing else happens, so E will equal F. How can I calculate E? Excretion. Collect the urine, send it to the lab. They're going to tell me how much inulin came out in the urine. What is filtered load? How much I poured Lauren times the concentration of the tequila. Remember that? How much did I pour Lauren? That's your GFR. That's your 125 milliliters per minute. Times plasma concentration. Starting concentration. How much tequila is in this, Kara? 4/5. Never you mind. Just drink. Can I draw blood? Can I draw blood, send it to the lab, and find out my starting plasma concentration for anything? Can I? Sure. This is something I can know. Hold on. Can I collect urine from my patient? Send it to the lab. Can they tell me how much urine I collected in an hour or a minute? Can they tell me how much inulin came out in that patient's urine? Can they tell me that? So, watch the magic. Here's my proof, number 2. Watch the magic. E equals F. You all agreed to that. Why? Because we're playing with something that is filtered only. Okay, how do I calculate E? Collect urine, send it to the lab. I can know this. I can know this. I need my starting concentration. I can draw blood, send it to the lab. I can also know this. What's the one thing I don't know for sure? GFR. Can I rearrange the equation and solve for GFR? And look what I get. Urine flow rate times the urine concentration of inulin, because we're playing with inulin, divided by the plasma concentrate. My starting out divided by in. What equation was that? Renal clearance value. When, here's the substitution, here's the math proof. This equation, when I use inulin, because of inulin's fate, E equals F, will tell me my patient's actual GFR. Are they at 125 or are they at 60? Because if they're at 60, it's going to take them a long time to clear that inulin from their plasma. Isn't that cool? So, how many of you have had blood and urine analysis done? And you heard me say, they told you your estimated GFR. They calculated your GFR. Where the hell were you when they injected you with inulin? Where were you? Did they?
No.
No. Could there be something else that we could use with a similar fate where we don't inconvenience our patient with having to inject them with this and have them jump to shake it around? Creatinine. Creatinine is an acceptable substitute. And when I started this lecture, I said, I need you to know inulin and its partner creatinine. I grouped them together. I said to you, they are technically different substances, but we use them in a similar way. I said that. I recorded myself. I know I said it. Creatinine is endogenous. Inulin is exogenous. I said I had to inject it into you. It came from plants. Creatinine comes from you. It's a byproduct of normal muscle metabolism. Let's all create some creatinine. You ready? Good. We made more creatinine. It's good enough. It's good enough. It's not perfect like inulin. It's good enough. It's going to give us a little skewed value, and here's why. Creatinine is somewhat secreted, just a little bit. That means someone snuck in the room and was helping me pick up bullets, just a little bit. Mrs. Street, I only got a minute before my mom picks me up. I'm going to help you for a minute. Just a little help. So creatinine, endogenous, we don't have to inconvenience the patient. It's good enough, but it is a slight overestimation of our patient's renal function. And you had a question. Do you remember what it was?
You answered that one.
I did? No! Funny how that works. Sometimes I know if I just keep talking, I will answer the question. Tyler's thinking.
You said it would be an over-exaggeration?
Slightly overestimation. Because it is not just filtered, but also secreted. So you're getting help, Elizabeth.
Do we account for that when we're calculating it? Do we multiply by?
That is an awesome question. There is a way to factor for that. Guyton and Hall talks about that. That is the reason why in your lab values it says eGFR for estimated GFR. We will not worry about that correction. For us, for testing purposes, we use creatinine as if it's like inulin, but we remember in our head that it will be a slight overestimation. That's the only thing I ask you to remember, that it will be slightly more. Oh, and also remember that creatinine comes from muscle metabolism and it is endogenous, not exogenous. So you're going to be doing problems like this, calculating someone's GFR using inulin or creatinine in that simple equation. Are they at 125? And for testing purposes, If they are below 120, we are saying now that they are not having proper renal function. Even though if you look at this from the National Kidney Foundation, I don't want you to memorize this. For testing purposes, anything below 120 is too low. If someone has over 125, that's not a problem. It's like 127, it's not a problem. It's fine. It's under that we worry about. Are you okay with that?
Is there an upper ceiling, like too much filtration is bad?
There is, but we're not, trust me, I will not give you a problem where you're calculating 200.
Okay.
Maybe 127, 128. That's okay. Below 120 is our cutoff. Now it's no good for us. So creatinine is endogenous. It is somewhat secreted. It will be a slight overestimation compared to inulin, but for us, for testing purposes, we don't care. It's okay. All right? I have one more math proof to show you. One more math proof. And here's why. Here's why. Let's say you calculate a GFR below 120. I ask you, is that okay? Is that normal? You all answer me with, no, it's not okay, Kara. According to our standards you established in class, it's below normal function. I said, okay. Well, now I need to know, where is the failure coming from? Is it pre-renal failure? Is it intra-renal failure? Is it post-renal failure? And Tyler's going, dang it, more math. Yeah, more math. Because it's not enough just to know if we've got failure. Where is the failure occurring? Well, Kara, let's just go straight to a biopsy and rule out kidneys. Let's just do a biopsy and rule out intrarenal failure. No, that is very invasive. That is not okay. If we can rule out the other two, pre-renal failure, post-renal failure, with non-invasive ways, don't you think we should? Yes, we should. Do you want to call that patient and say, you need to come in for a kidney biopsy? Corkscrew, dig out some of the tissue. That's not okay. If we can rule out pre and post easily with non-invasive ways, we should. Okay, let's start with post. Post-renal failure. It's a man. Okay, bend over, gloves. Let's do a prostate check. We can also send blood work to the lab and they can check for antigens for the prostate, PSAs. We can rule out prostate issues. Honey, still, we've been married for almost 25 years, and the man still does not understand why I don't have to go get my prostate checked. He's gotten better because at first he couldn't understand why I had to go get my prostate checked every year when he didn't. I'm like, I don't have a prostate. How many times do I have to tell you this? Obstruction to urine output. Maybe there is a renal calculus. That's a fancy way of saying kidney stone. Okay, well, that's easy to detect. Let's just do a little ultrasound. Do we see that little bugger in there? Those are non-invasive things. Okay, Kara, what about pre-renal failure? What if it's an obstruction in the renal artery? What if it is the heart failing as a pump? Well, okay. If it's an obstruction in the renal artery or the heart failing as a pump, right back at you, then their renal blood flow and their renal plasma flow will be impaired, won't it? And didn't I teach you the normal values for renal blood flow? Yes, I did. 1,200 milliliters per minute. Renal plasma flow 660 milliliters per minute. Okay, we're only worried about the effect of renal blood. Okay, ERPF, 594 milliliters per minute. Let's see if that's normal. You all say, okay, let's find out if their ERPF is normal. And then back calculate to find out if their renal blood flow is normal. Let's do that, Kara. How do we do that? Oh, well, we just need a different substance to look after. We just need a different substance with a different fate. And it's my job to prove to you why this substance that I'm about to teach you can actually tell you your patient's ERPF. And if that's below normal, boom! You've now solved that they have pre-renal failure. And now we know how to help the patient. Good job! Now you're the nurse going to the patient and not saying, well, the doctor says you need to have a kidney transplant. No, it's like, oh, you've got an obstruction in your renal artery. We're just going to take care of that for you. It's not hard. So what is the substance? PAH. If we want to find out if the blood flow and plasma flow through the kidney is where it should be, all we have to use is PAH. And it's my job to prove why it works. That's my job, not yours. PAH, what is its fate? Got to start there. Because the fate tells you why it'll work. Why we can use PAH to calculate someone's ERPF, effective renal plasma flow. The amount of plasma going to the kidneys for the sake of being filtered. It is filtered and secreted. And listen, I have to inject it. And if I inject such a low amount so that it is 100% filtered and secreted and cleansed from your plasma on the first go around through the kidneys, I can use that to figure out if enough blood got to the kidneys in the first place. So did you hear that? Can't over-inject. I don't want to start too quickly. So, for example, I'm picking up bullets. Mac is picking up lightsabers. Hayden is helping me. Okay? There are 2 bullets and there are 2 lightsabers. Who's going to clear their carpet faster? Me and Hayden. Why? Filtration, secretion, there's just 2. We both bend over one time and our carpet is cleared. But Mac, he's got 2 things to pick up. He's going to have to make 2 rotations, isn't he? Okay. So I shouldn't over-inject PAH. I want this thing cleared on the first go-around, one time. He and I bend over one time and clear. Can you visualize that? Okay, so I need to go back to my equation. I want to get rid of some math. E equals F plus S. I got a helper. We're really going to get this cleared. None of it is being reabsorbed. So E equals F plus S. That's our equation that we're working with. Why is that the equation? Because of the fate of PAH. It is filtered and secreted. So if I don't over-inject PAH, here it comes into my 1 glomerulus. Some of it gets filtered according to the Starling forces. Some of that PAH is going in the peritubular capillary. It's going, neener, 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 oh, I didn't get filtered, and those nephron cells go, whoosh! You're on your way to the toilet. You thought you got away. And look at this plasma going back out of the kidney to the body. It's cleared. It's cleansed. On the first time through. Can you see that? First time through. Okay, this part, my part. This is me proving why it works, okay? You could either just put your head down, or you can watch me sweat the proof, because this one's a little difficult. One time through, one and done. A lot like you all, right, with this class. One and done. One time through. One time through. Okay, fine. The PAH has to get in. Has to get in. Has to get to the kidney. How does it get to the kidney? What's the entrance for blood into the kidney? Renal artery. Good. What are the two exit routes out of the kidney? Either go back out in the blood or out into the urine. But didn't you pay attention to the previous picture? I don't want to over-inject PAH. I didn't have any of it going back out in the blood, did I? One and done. So that means, yes, I agree. Here is my way into the kidney. I have PAH in the blood because I injected it. I am worried about the part of the blood that will be filtered. That's ERPF, the plasma part. In must equal out. Are you seeing that? What comes in must go out. But if I don't over-inject, none of the PAH should exit through the renal vein. Should not come out of the renal vein. That's the picture I showed you on the previous slide. It should all come out in the urine. Watch the magic. If this is 0, what should this math be in this parentheses then?
0.
0, it disappears, as Mac used to say when he was 2. It disappears. And now I have N, so plasma concentration of PAH times the part of plasma that will actually be filtered equals our one way out through the urine. Urine flow rate times the amount of PAH coming out in the urine. Yes? Rearrange the equation. Rearrange the equation. Can I collect urine and send it to the lab? Can I have them quantify how much PAH came out in the urine? Can I draw blood and know how much PAH was in my patient after I injected it? Can I? So do I know this if I send it to the lab? Yep. Do I know my PAH concentration in my blood? Yeah, draw blood, send it to the lab. What's the one thing I don't know? ERPF. The actual plasma flow to my patient's kidneys for the sake of being filtered. That's the one thing I don't know. And look what this equation reduces to. It's our renal clearance equation all over again. It's the same equation that I used to calculate GFR when I used Inulin. Wait, Kara, I was sleeping. How can I use the same equation and have it give me different information in a patient? And I'm going to say because the solutes you use have different fates. If you use this equation with PAH, it tells you your patient's ERPF. How well is the blood going to the kidneys? If I use that equation with inulin or creatinine, it tells me my patient's GFR. Very non-invasive. Number 1, GFR, find out if my patient's kidney function is fine. And then number 2, with PAH, I find out if they're having adequate blood flow in the first place. If they're not, well then hell, that explains their renal failure. Let's fix the blood flow problem. Now we know what we're dealing with. Should everything be cleansed from your blood? Some things shouldn't be ever cleared from your blood, should they? Is glucose ever cleared from your blood? No. So glucose does not have a clearance. That doesn't make sense. We always have to have glucose in our blood. Look at sodium. Darn near close to zero. Do we ever clear sodium from our blood? Where is sodium most abundantly found? Extracellularly. What is plasma? An extracellular fluid. Inulin has a clearance of 125. Because it's filtered only. We use that to calculate GFR, which should be 125. PAH has a clearance of 594. Why is it higher than inulin? Because it's filtered and secreted. So of course I'm going to cleanse more plasma of that if I've got help. Predict. What do you think the fate of urea is?
Reabsorbed.
Why? Why'd you say that?
It's less than the filtration rate.
So Tyler said, well, if inulin is filtered only and it's cleared at 125 milliliters per minute, if urea is less than that, well then clearly something else is happening. I'm not clearing as much plasma, probably because urea is reabsorbed. But Kara, that's a waste. I know. Why are we reabsorbing waste? Oh, that is a delicious story. But not for tonight, my young Padawan learners. Urea is a helpful waste. Urea helps you when you are severely dehydrated. Urea is your friend to help you make a highly concentrated, scant urine. It's a good waste to have around when you are severely water deprived or dehydrated. To be continued. These are the equations I taught you tonight. That's not a big list. The problem is, when do you use them? Well, here's my little carrot. Okay? You were so good. Here's my little carrot. Hold on. That quiz you took tonight, if you do what I ask you to do tonight, that quiz, those points will go straight to lecture unit 4. Just add it on. Like extra points. Do I have your attention? That's a good carrot, right? Okay.